Previously on the Game On podcast.
That's why it's really interesting. We won all those games and including beating the Bays that year. This is 75.
Yeah.
My first premiership, and the club's first for, as everyone knows, 25 years, and we were quite, as a group, we were quite astounded that they were absolutely almost raging red hot favourites in the grand final, and we'd beat them during the year. Sure, they smashed us in the second semi, but we still felt confident. We could handle them in the grand final. So I just remember, and I don't know if people will know this, but leading up to the grand final, all the stuff in the paper was all Glenelg. Photos, articles, everything, and that was done for a reason. Bob Hammond and Wally Miller came to said, right, there will be no interviews. I was asked to go on Barry Ian's show, with Peter Plus.
Yep.
And on a Friday morning, no, that got ruled out. That got cancelled. So the only staged photo we had was Graham Dunstan sitting in Premier Don Dunstan's chair I think it was a photo Saturday morning of the grand final. That was the only staged publicity shot of that whole week. And so every time you picked up a paper or heard the radio, it was all Glenelg. And I know as a player that was really pissing me off, and that's what it was. That's what it was designed for. We were sort of really, really motivated by Bob Hammond. His the Friday night at his place before the grand final was just fantastic, really good. The way that he motivated us, we were so confident when we ran out. We knew it'd be a tough game, and in the end it was. It was only 9 goals to 7 goals or something.
Nine goals 10 to 7 goals 10. Yep. Yeah,
it was always going to be a tough game with the defence on both sides were pretty good and on top. So it was a dour game, but we just knew we had the commitment to take. And I reckon they might have been a little bit complacent. I heard Cornsey mention that many years later, that they might have, just got a bit complacent, a bit ahead of themselves, and maybe that was due to all their publicity they got leading up to that week. It was just a matter of them running out and knocking us over like they did in the second semi.
Yeah, I could never work that out. Okay.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
Welcome to Game On. My name's Pete. Once again, joined with Malcolm and Roger Woodcock regaling us with the 75. And very interesting that no press, no engagements, no nothing. And stroke of genius, really, at the end of the day.
Well, I think Bob Hammond and Wally Miller on that one. Wally, the great man, the doyen of administrators in South Australian footy for mine. And, a fantastic result, something which I'll certainly never ever forget. Phil Gallagher's goal in the last quarter passed just over my right-hand shoulder, actually. So, when I was...
Didn't take a hanger?
No, I was 12. I was rather small, and, great memories.
We've talked with a few premiership stars on this podcast previously, and no grand finals easy, and Glenelg, as Roger was explaining, were a little confident going into it, and it backfired a little bit in the end.
Yeah, we could never work out their attitude, and, we were reasonably confident. Ian Stasnowski was a huge out. Young Jim Teal, the late great Jim Teal, and the late Stazzer as well. Playing fullback, did the job. Look, Norwood history, it was a great day.
And obviously, media commitments these days have completely changed about face. You couldn't do that anymore, could you?
No, just a tad. Yes.
All right.
Around the grounds.
And on Around the Grounds today, mate, we're going to have a look at the soccer. We're going to touch base with the SANFLW, some late-breaking cricket news coming in today. But Gather Round, we're going to start off with Gather Round in SA. What a fantastic achievement from the South Australian government to put this show on and produce the show that not many expected that they'd be able to pull off.
It's interesting. So just getting around the traps, and it was probably one guy who nailed it for mine, where he actually said, "Hey, I'm a rusted-on Liberal voter, and this guy's the best thing that's happened to South Australia in years." And I reckon that nailed it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, anyone out there who's actually being honest, Peter Malcom, he's creamy at the moment. He may well be end up the most popular. The announcement on Sunday and the roar and all that, I think that doesn't happen to a politician. Normally, politicians, everyone's booing. And
absolutely.
Somehow Mally's become the most popular man around.
So we heard, obviously, through all the broadcasts that were on through Fox and Seven and every other broadcast that was on, that this opportunity came across his desk. He wanted in almost instantly and almost tagged Gill like a ruck rover, stuck on him all day long.
Oh, look, originally it was going to go to Sydney.
Yep.
And look, I won't hold my thing away. I used to work for Peter, so I know Peter pretty well. Knowing him through footy, playing for Adelaide Uni, obviously, as well. So I go back a long way with Peter. And once he decides he's going to do something, it's full on and kabang. And to get it over here and then get it announced for 3 years, which I'm pretty reasonable mail that it was going to be 2 years, and somehow to get that extra year, another one on the last day. He's a winner. It was just fantastic. It was a unique atmosphere. So you had to be in an Elder Park, and they were getting over 15,000 people a day go through there. When I was in there on Sunday, it was 6,212 people at the time, because the security guys are the league guys.
Yes, I sort of clicking them in.
And I know them all.
Yep.
So, having a chat, and it was just a unique atmosphere where you're talking to supporters from every ground, every club. There I was in there on the Sunday. We ran into a Hawthorn guy, and mucking around, hey, you better hurry up. And he said, "Hey, Norwood Oval, do you know what the best way?" I said, "Right, yes, young fella." And I even explained one of my parking spots there to him. So,
right,
trust me, I was very popular with him. He come and yelled out at the scoreboard and that.
Fantastic.
Thank you. And it was just great.
So obviously, let's take a step back a little bit and say, all right, so Adelaide have gone hammer and tong. They've got the event and in some respects ripped it out of the hands of Sydney. To the Events South Australian team to be able to put together what they did in the time frame that they did really is mind-boggling, really, isn't it?
Oh, very much so. The bit at Elders Park. I didn't get up to the one at Picky Flat. I'll certainly do that next year. Look, I'm unabashed. I'm an SANFL. I don't follow AFL anywhere near the extent it won me over last week.
Absolutely.
Big time. Okay, I worked at two of the games as well. So that, at the games at Norwood, so that was a little bit different and a buzz as well. And actually, the first person I ran into at Norwood when I got there on Friday was James Fantasia.
Yep. And
I said, geez, this is just like an old Saturday morning in the 80s. We were talking quickly, briefly discussed games.
Yes.
I said, geez, this reminds me of the Norwood Port game in 82. And stuff like that. And fairness going, and it was fantastic.
Okay, so let's look at this logistically. That obviously during the pandemic, a lot of games got played up in Sydney and definitely in Queensland. Obviously, the AFL Grand Final was hosted in Queensland and in Perth.
Yep.
It sort of felt fair in some respects that Adelaide got a bit of an opportunity to host a major event. It's just become bigger than Ben-Hur. That's the problem.
Yeah, very much so. But let's also remember the SANFL government were the ones who then put their neck on the line. It was a big commitment, and if it had bombed, geez, then the heat would have hit the fan.
Yep.
But in the end, because it was so good, I think the AFL virtually had no other option but to go, hey, it stays in South Australia, and let's look through it realistically.
Exactly. This is where I'm sort of leading, that
you can get to
here.
Adelaide.
Yep.
You think Perth is just too far away. Just the sheer expense of getting there, and your time span and all that. Sydney with rugby up there, would they be prepared to have no rugby at all for a week and all that sort of thing?
I wouldn't think so.
Brisbane as well, and you've got Brisbane then soon the Gabba being redeveloped, so that probably puts them out of the equation.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to go to Tasmania until the AFL team
is
in
Agreed.
and that stadium's then developed. So
I agree, yep.
I just think it is the logical place.
And obviously, logistically wise, school holidays, not only here in SA, that Victoria, there was a lot of people that were able to drive over. It's just a central destination. I mean, we're not quite halfway between Perth and Melbourne, but it's culminating in the middle of Australia basically, and Adelaide seemed to be the logical choice.
And apparently, the school holidays don't quite match in as well
Not
next
quite,
year.
yeah.
Now, I wonder if there's a bit of negotiating going on behind the scenes to
readjust it a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. So I just think in the end, it is the logical place.
Yep.
I'd almost put.
I know we're a little bit biased on that, but
yeah.
I think logistically you've got to look at it. I mean, if I'm living in Sydney and in Melbourne, trying to get to Perth, it's a process. It's a big process.
Oh, look, and I made sure I spoke to people. That many people, and again, every state, and they were all just glowing.
Mm-hmm.
And there were Victorians saying, it's got to be in Adelaide. I even ran into an intelligent Collingwood supporter who was bagging the Collingwood people on social media going, how dumb are they at complaining? No, of course it should be in Adelaide.
Yep.
And saying...
Did you get a photo of this guy?
I probably should have really got him on the front page of the paper. So, yeah, and it was... Yeah, and look, okay, let's also a bit of Nord romanticism, the Aish angle there.
This is where I'm sort of going next with it. All right, so let's look at the venues. Let's start there, and then we'll lead on to the games as we get into it. So Adelaide Oval, obviously the obvious choice for that. 2 games at Norwood Oval, and
just one thing on Adelaide Oval.
Yep.
Where I think they'll do it better next year. I don't think the double header worked. That people were sort of to one spot, not others. So it was a sellout, but where there was only 20,000 people in the ground.
Because I think teams didn't want to watch other teams. Yep.
So I think because the event was so big, a lot bigger than they realised, that it would have sold out even in its own. Yep. So like the Classic was whatever games it was, where I think they could have done it, had the order better.
It would have been the West Coast Geelong and the Collingwood St Kilda game, I reckon, was probably the 2.
Yeah, but I'm saying on the double header on the Saturday where it was they played. So they had the game at Mount Barker first. Well, no, I think ideally it should have been the Melbourne Eston game first, standalone effectively, then the game in Melbourne, and then the Port Western Bulldogs with them all as separate games.
Yep,
and that would have worked.
So you're sort of talking potentially leaving that game in between to clear the stadium, get themselves ready, and then new supporters coming in. I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, 2 games at Norwood and 1 at Mount Barker, and Mount Barker came up an absolute treat. I mean, I heard some of the players saying that the surface was as good as the MCG.
Yeah, look, no, it is. It's a fantastic oval. It's exactly the same size as Adelaide Oval. I think they've got to get A-grade district cricket there, but that's a different topic.
Yep.
But it's a brilliant ground.
Yep.
Look, Norwood, the Oval, fantastic. Yes. Some of the amenities we've got to get better.
Yep.
Being blatantly honest as a Norwood person, because I'll get bagged otherwise that I'm not being honest. A couple of things where a bar wasn't open on Friday night and it should have been.
Yep.
So little things there.
But again, this is the first time. Yeah. Yes, we understood that the crowds were going to be huge, but it was a matter of testing the waters a little bit. We're going to talk to Barry Solomon a little bit later on, obviously the curator at Norwood Oval, and he's going to give us obviously some ground manager, that he's going to give us some insights into how the ground's going. But logistically, for next year, they're talking potentially a game at the Barossa, maybe looking at the McLaren Vale in a couple of years' time.
I think a game in the Barossa makes sense. One less game at Adelaide Oval it would be my suggestion there. Mm-hmm. We're going to say you're biased with Norwood, but I still think Norwood just ticks so many boxes. It's not only Norwood Oval, it's also the restaurants, the strip there, the proximity to closeness to Adelaide Oval to get people back and forth, and that. So the time spans of the games. Norwood Oval ticks every box.
Yep.
And look, the people out there saying, you're just biased towards Norwood. Yes, I do think it's the best ground. I'm not lying there. But I think it was pretty crucial. Hawthorn within 24 hours requested to play at Norwood Oval again next year. So I think that says a bit.
Absolutely. And that was what I was going to say, that the games obviously being at the Adelaide Oval and then the couple at Norwood, which was, really only a stone's throw from the city centre, and obviously the majority of the hotels were completely booked out. So they're talking about potentially closing down the parade, having more stalls, food, beverage outlets. Obviously, Norwood are going to learn from this experience for next year.
Oh, look,
is there an
I thought
opportunity?
the bit out the front of Norwood Oval was fantastic with the big screen. There was plenty of food vans, plenty of drink vans there.
So it was a little bit of a mini Elder Park almost type setup, but I think it was really, really good. And
full credit, I must admit, I wish I'd gone and found out his name. The guy playing the background music. I'm not a great music person, and I'm always thinking of the music just can't be too loud to make sure you can still chat to your mate next to you or anyone else. And Nord nailed it. He was excellent.
Dale Fleming actually posted, I think, something online today about it. And yes, I did notice the gentleman under the rotunda playing his music, and it was quite a great atmosphere. That's for sure. Yeah. Do we see maybe one game going away from Adelaide Oval or maybe one game going away from Norwood, potentially?
I think one game will go away from Adelaide Oval. I think there'll still be plenty of argy-bargy for the suburban venue. I still think Norwood ticks all boxes. Look, I think Richmond is the other potential pure ground.
Yes.
In terms of ground that people size, but whether there's enough stuff around there, but so at least it is still close to Adelaide Oval.
Agreed.
So there's maybe there.
So the other one is probably Glenelg. Yeah. Obviously, you got Jetty Road, but that's a real logistical nightmare at the best of times around there. Can they cater for 10,000? 10,000?
Maybe. Let's remember, too, fairness to Glenelg, that the Tex Walker's comeback game down there, that I think they did have roughly 11, 12 that night, but I'm not sure on the AFL let's remember, we've had 20,000 at Norwood Oval and we're only allowed 10.
Yes.
Now, I wonder what Glenelg may only be allowed 5 to 6 under the AFL rulings and guidelines. So
I think I agree with you. Norwood, logistically from the city centre, the retail strip is basically right on the door of Norwood Oval. I think it does make a lot of sense. But, there's also going to be some other SANFL clubs that are going to say, hey, we wouldn't mind hosting this as well. And, that helps them with their facilities, the money that gets invested, et cetera, et cetera. But everyone's screaming out for the Barossa. So it'll be the best wine festival that they've ever seen up there if the game is the centrepiece and the wine is the festival around it.
That's how it will work.
And from a tourism point of view, the government would be pushing for that as well. Yeah. And then obviously later on down the track, McLaren Vale. Mount Barker, we brushed on it briefly before. Ideal location for a game like that?
Yeah, and so whether that then stays there or becomes does that become the game at McLaren, or are we going to make sure that we're not going to only commit there to 1 year?
Yes.
And all that, and there was only compliments. There was compliments there food-wise and drink-wise as well, which I think is really important, and the turf is magnificent. Spoke to Hugh Greenwood and Todd Goldstein on the Sunday in there, and they were very, very complimentary of Mount Barker.
Absolutely. One last thing on Norwood Oval, temporary stands. Do you think that there may be an opportunity to put some temporary stands up maybe at the northern end?
Struggling for room.
Yeah.
We really are.
Yep.
Yeah, I doubt it.
I heard Jason Dunstall, Brian Taylor, those guys obviously commentated out at Norwood Oval. They were unbelievably glowing of how good is this back at suburban grounds. The crowd are standing up, they're enjoying it. And, some of the people were sort of saying that, people are having to stand up. Well, you go to the Adelaide Oval, the best part of Adelaide Oval experience is actually standing on the hill. Yeah,
for me, it's a real footy environment.
Absolutely.
And I think that's probably was the other thing with me. Okay, it was Hawthorn because they were playing GWS. It was very much a Hawthorn crowd, but at least there were still supporters from the other side. It still had a bit of a real footy feel about it, which you don't get at Adelaide Oval in a normal game.
Yep. Can only say positive things, and the government's already come out and said we're planning to make this bigger and better next year, which I don't know how they can do it. every league boss, every league CEO, every team CEO was here, and they got treated to an absolute treat of South Australian produce, not only from the food and beverage point of view, but obviously the games at Adelaide Oval and Norwood Oval.
I think they were also blown away. The numbers turned up at the club trainings and their captain's run and stuff like that.
I mean, I went out to Sturt to watch Carlton.
Yeah.
There was like an SANFL crowd there.
Yeah, and there was with Collingwood as well. I briefly spoke to Tom Harley at Swans training at St. Peter's College, a.k.a. Hackney High School. Hull said that, I said to him, this is like a finals. He said, these numbers are like finals training.
Yep.
Now, that's huge.
That is. I really loved that the AFL clubs aligned themselves with a couple of SANFL clubs, made an open training session. There was no fun or fanfare with all of that kind of stuff. They just hung around, spoke to the fans. It was truly a great footy festival.
And I think Fremantle were blown away by the number of people at Norwood.
Yes.
And that's speaking to some Freo people, and they said they were more there for that than what they've been, because Freo had played at Adelaide over the week before.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was fascinating talking to Freo people. There's way more people. This is huge. They actually there was more Freo support there than Gold Coast, but it was still
because they're only allocated a very small portion of the Adelaide Oval seating at Adelaide Oval, and this is what happens with most of the teams. Yeah. The best part about it was that it was opened up to everybody. So you bought your $30 ticket or your double-header ticket or whatever it was. You could be watching. You could be a Collingwood supporter and watching a Geelong.
And you did see plenty of that in the two games at Norwood. And I think they said it was extra 35 flights over from Perth. So that's huge. And okay, people can say, well, that shows people can go to WA, but I think that's more showing that
the central location makes a big difference.
Yeah.
All right, mate, we'll take a deep breath there, and now let's have a look at the actual gather-round games. Started on Thursday night with Adelaide v Carlton, mate.
Probably the surprise was Adelaide so easy. I think we said, both of us tipped Carlton, but it was very much a toss of the coin job. Mm-hmm. I admit when McGovern pulled out late, I didn't mind that, but the game was effectively over at quarter time, and the Crows' first quarter was probably the best quarter of footy there's been played by a team
for
this year.
Yep.
So,
okay, I'll declare I'm a Carlton man.
Yep.
I picked Carlton to win.
Yep.
I went there with high hopes that Walsh coming back in, McKay not being suspended, Curnow, the Curnow-McKay forward line was going to fire along. I was actually blown away at the 15-minute mark by Adelaide's systems and procedures. Yeah. They were sharp, they were on, and like you said, it was the best quarter. But the organisation just looks brilliant first, like in live game. Yeah. You don't quite see it on the TV as much. But that's about as comprehensive quarter as I've seen all year for the last couple of years, to be honest with you.
Pretty incredible that you can win by 10 goals but have less inside 50s.
Yeah.
Now, that's a damning stat. It's a compliment to the Adelaide's defence. Mm-hmm. But it's also a damning stat against Carlton. They'd be, hey, hang on.
Yep.
What in the hell are we doing here?
I just thought Carlton were absolutely stunned at quarter time to go, where did this come from and how did this happen? And boy, oh boy, how do we get back? And, Adelaide were always in control, obviously, because the first quarter was so damaging. But, they did what they needed to do in second quarter because you knew Carlton were going to respond. Carlton were, back in it within a couple of goals in the third quarter. And then Adelaide came again, didn't they? Very impressive signs.
Yep.
Very impressive signs.
Very much so.
And I'm saying that as a Carlton man, I was just blown away by their systems at the moment. And, geez, if they can produce that on a regular basis, they're going to trouble a few teams.
Well, it's pretty incredible. They've only got one or two injuries. So Bond's listed, and I think Butts is in a bit of doubt for this week, but that's a ridiculous injury record at the moment.
One player, I think, or no players that either haven't played yet are on the injury list. Yeah. That is an incredible statistic. All right, mate, we move on.
Yep.
The first game at Norwood Oval, Freo v the Suns. I'll hand over to you because you saw it live. I did see a replay of it.
Yeah, look, Gold Coast looked the better side.
They
for
did.
a fair percentage of the game, but Fremantle kept at it. And in the end, they probably Gold Coast, bit of stage fright. Just they sort of don't look like they don't know how to finish a game. They They missed some goals.
Yep.
The old bit, keep the opposition in the game.
And Lukosius ran right early on, didn't he?
Oh, geez, his leading patterns are elite. I can remember him playing as a youngster against Norwood, and Cam Shenton made that point after the game, saying he's got the best leading patterns of anyone I've ever played on. And yeah, he looks ready. You can imagine him in a better side at the moment than Gold Coast, and yeah, he was fantastic.
So obviously the Gold Coast controlled the game for 2 3/4 of the game, but the last quarter of the third quarter, if that makes sense, and the final quarter, Freo really got on a bit of a roll and started to go a little bit more direct, didn't they?
Yeah, and Brodie came in as the sub, and Will Brodie's been a bit of a controversial omission the first few rounds after having a great year last year. Mm-hmm. So it seemed a bit weird, really, his treatment. He was vital for them.
Yep.
Yeah, and look, obviously...
Well, I was going to say, I'll let you do the stat on this one here.
Yes, James Aish keeps his record intact, yet to play in a senior losing game at Norwood Oval, and it was amusing that where I walk from, that I've go past the visitors' rooms, and Fremantle had lost the toss. So Aishi was actually the first person I ran into. So chat with Aishi, and then ended up with Longmuir, the coach, and Bob Murphy. And Longmuir had no idea of James Aish's record. He does now. Let's just say some colourful language will be left out that he was blown away by it.
Yep. I must admit, I got home from work, flipped this one directly on the TV, and I was thinking of that stat going, that might be in a bit of trouble here, mate. And then all of a sudden they came with a rush, and James keeps his record intact. All right, mate, we move on to the Richmond-Sydney game. This was a bit of a surprise as far as how Sydney went about it. I thought Richmond might get the win just, but how Sydney went about completely changing this and flipping the script was amazing.
Well, Sydney, because of their outs with their talls, that's where I thought gave Richmond a big chance. Yeah, but in the end, they really were convincingly the better side, and the Tigers, I think, might be under a bit more pressure than we all realised.
Yep. We didn't mention this earlier on, but Jordan Dawson for the Crows was absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And that brings me to this point. Papley was unbelievably not only in the right spot, but he really picked that team up on his shoulders and went, come on, boys, let's go. And there's a bit of byplay there between Sydney and Richmond at the moment that sort of got a bit willing throughout the game, and there was some words, but that's that white line fever. So
argy-bargy, don't worry about that.
Exactly right. But Papley was elite, wasn't he?
Yeah, 6 goals. That's the best small forward performance for the year, no doubt about that. And wasn't only the 6 goals, he took command of the game.
Oh, he did. He absolutely put the Swans up on his shoulders and said, come on, boys, let's go. Richmond, they're in unfamiliar territory, aren't they? They've been so successful over the last 5 to 6 years. Going through that change, I mean, Cochin gets subbed out, which I thought was a little bit weird at the time because I think he was just starting to assert himself on the game a little bit. I wouldn't say he was taking the game by the scruff of the neck, but he just looked like he was getting into what he needed to get into, and then they subbed him out.
Yeah, I wonder if his body's catching up with him.
Is it a case of a bit like we talked about Buddy last week, maybe 1 year too many?
Possibly, and I think they thought there was another tilt in them.
Yep.
And look, they've got a lot of injuries though. Nankervis, Lynch, they've got some real keys out.
Yep.
Gibson, the young key defender who looked really good last year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some guns out there for the moment with Richmond, and Father Time may have caught up a bit as well with a couple.
Yep.
Maybe there's not quite the
push from
the 25.
Yep.
And Hopper and Taranto have been
a little bit disappointing, haven't they? Yeah.
Quite been as good as we thought they'd be.
Yep. Is that a case of new environment?
Maybe.
Learning the systems a little bit more?
So, but they're, big game this week, Richmond and Melbourne, that's huge.
Absolutely. So, we talk about Richmond. You look at Adelaide, with Walker, Sloan, and a couple of those older guys that we thought may have hung around a year too long and needed to make way for some of these young lads. Richmond are almost in the same boat, that they just want that younger group to push through and give them that new lease of life.
It was funny also with Sloan that he started the year on the wing and was struggling, and then since he's gone back on ball, he suddenly looked more at home again. Yep. So it's, getting people in the right spots to suit, what you've got is a big thing.
It's certainly released Jordan Dawson a little bit. Keys has been able to play a little bit more up forward rather than on the ball. Makes a big, big difference. And at the moment, I see Dusty finding the ball plenty, but he's just not as damaging as he has
he's not
been.
Hurting the opposition with it.
All right, mate, we move on to the Saturday game up at Mount Barker. Brisbane were always going to be in control of this game, but North Melbourne sort of took it up to them for the first 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, nearly to half-time, and then Brisbane's greater class and probably just batted a bit deeper in their list.
It just seemed like the Brisbane forwards had a free man up forward rather than the free man down back.
Yeah, Danaher and Hipwood both had their best games of the year. Now, is that the opposition? Let's just wait and see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we move on to the night game. Probably the surprise of the round for me, apart from Adelaide absolutely smashing Carlton, Essendon defeating Melbourne.
Yeah, very interesting weather. It sort of varied a bit. There was a bit of almost a Melbourne weather about it, that it was all 4 seasons in one day. And, Melbourne were just a touch off.
Yep.
Steve May was the touch off without Lever next to him.
Yes. That was quite interesting, that the dynamic duo back there when one is out, and it's almost like the Gawn and Grundy type deal at the moment, is that Gawn's out, Grundy's having to shoulder a lot of the responsibilities, and he's playing well, but he's not moving as well through the ground, and certainly not defending like he should be.
I do note that John Fidge, the former Glenelg full forward, and he's played for Melbourne. He's a big D's man. He's been adamant for ages that Lever's their most important player, and I did think of that during the game, that he may well be.
Is he the defender that Adelaide's missing at the moment? Potentially.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not going to open up old wounds there. Essendon, very impressive.
Yeah, they have been. They've been the surprise packet, and how good was Draper? At 3 goals and just a huge impact. I love Sam Draper.
And he's a character too, which is fantastic.
He's just like a big kid in a lolly shop, the way he goes about it. And he's having a huge impact.
Speaking of Essendon, Redmond, the Crows potentially looking at him as part of that back line piece of the puzzle that they're missing.
Yeah, I don't know on that one. I want to wait and see, and they've got to also then get their points up for next year with Tyler Welsh,
the father-son.
Play.
Yep.
Jack Michaelini is also eligible, so in the 24, so not the next draft, the one after, which Tyler Welsh will be the Crows' first choice.
Yep.
So on that side of things, wait and see.
All right, and then we move on to the Port Adelaide Bulldogs game Saturday night. This was entertaining, actually, not only because of the weather, but just back and forth with these two teams once again.
Also really glad that Jason Horne-Francis shoved it up. Yeah, I'm really the booing. He's not the first person to want to go home. The way he's being treated for mine has been ridiculous.
Okay, so let me put this out here. Is it a case of it is because he was the number one pick and left a year later that everybody is sort of a little bit dirty on that he didn't give North Melbourne the respect that drafting him as number one happened? I'm just throwing it out there.
I think there's a bit of that. I don't think the media have helped.
Yep.
And look, I really lost a lot of respect for David King the week before. The crap he wrote about Horne-Francis, where it was just vindictive North Melbourne rubbish, where he singled out an instant where Horne-Francis supposedly hadn't chased. Well, the umpire blew the whistle. They all stopped.
Yep.
And Horne-Francis was the furthest Port player away. Usain Bolt and a motorbike wouldn't have caught Rochelle. It was ridiculous.
And obviously Kane Corns had said the ice bath issue and all that kind of stuff. So, it is an interesting byplay. I was actually quite impressed that Ken Hinckley came out and said something. He really put his foot down and said, hey, this is not on. If, you're a true footy supporter, this kid's only 19. Hey, we need to just ease up a little bit.
I thought it was good. He went into bat for his player, and Horne-Francis played one of the great last quarters. He was the guy who got... Yes, Marshall kicked 2 goals in 3 minutes and all that.
Yeah, but his work in the middle was amazing.
Was the one. Butters over the 4 quarters, got no problem with that. But Horne-Francis played a Roger James quarter reminiscent of Roger James' prelim final quarter in 04. He was fantastic.
Absolutely. And that was what I was going to lead to, that his last quarter was elite by, anybody's standard, let alone a 19-year-old at his new club saying, hey, come on, boys, we're not going to lose this one here. Yeah. And his impact was amazing. And a lot of that talk with Kenny actually started with Jason Horne-Francis out on the ground, and they've shown some footage of that. And you could see that the young fella's a little bit disappointed in, what's happening, but Kenny's backing him 110%, and that's all you can ask.
Oh, and the bit of Crows supporters gloating, they've managed to get Dawson, Rochelle and Rankin instead of Horne-Francis. But, hey,
it's a sliding doors moment.
It is, but hey, Horne-Francis is special.
Absolutely.
In 5 years' time, you watch how people are going, how good's this guy?
Absolutely. And all three of the Crows' selections was very smart in the way that they traded. Look, they posed the question. That's all you can do to North Melbourne. North Melbourne politely declined. Yeah. And that's fine. And Adelaide would have had plan A, B and C in place if that had happened, and it's fallen into place for them. So, yeah, I think, you've got to take it with a pinch of salt that the recruiters are looking at, 150 kids each year, and they're trying to obviously not only get the best talent into their club, but they're also trying to bring certain players home if they can. Definitely need to hold sway on that. But it's fact that the Crows got three great players. Yeah. Port got an absolute gun as well. So I think everybody wins in that situation. Yep. All right, mate, we move on to Sunday. Geelong v the Eagles.
Yeah, it is predictable. Geelong way too good. Yeah, they started slightly slowly, but
once again, one big quarter.
West Coast Eagles, I don't think they had a great list anyway, but the injuries they've got at the moment.
I mean, their waffle side got belted by 156 points because they're actually trying to delay some of their games so that way some of their players can not only be available for the AFL, but if they're not on that emergency list and playing, that they can get back to obviously play. So it's an absolute nightmare as far as injuries go at the moment.
It is, and they're very average West Coast. Oof.
They're coming from a long way back. We'll move on to the second game at Norwood Oval, an absolute rip snorter of a game in the end. Competitive is probably the way to put it.
It was. I thought I didn't think it was quite as good a standard game as Friday's, but look, Harry Himmelberg and look, they tried to blow the game. The amount of misses Hogan kicked 2 goals for.
Yep. So 10 goals, 17 to 11-9.
Yeah. So Himmelberg's mark though, sensational grab to kick the goal to hit the front, and then down the other end, he's the one who touched the ball. And you're a bit weird that in that situation when the +1 goes back in that last, normally the other side gets the player to go with that player. So if he's gone with Himmelberg, he's then jostling and shepherds that through. Yeah. So, that was a bit strange. And so, I would say that GWS won from the coach's box as well.
Fair enough. And I thought Impey's goal was going to go through and Himmelberg almost got caught underneath the ball, but those big long fingers just got enough on it. So entertaining game at Norwood Oval. And like you said, Hawthorn already requesting to play at Norwood next year, which is fantastic. Yep. All right, and then we move on to the much-anticipated final game of the round, Collingwood v St Kilda.
Yeah, and look, it was probably a game of the defences on top. There's, as we know, Ross Lyon with his defensive structures slowed Collingwood down. Collingwood looked like they were home in the last quarter, and I'll be honest, I left Norwood Oval from watching the screen. Yep. Yeah, game's over. That'll do me for the weekend sort of thing. And walked back to my car and, the Collingwood song's being played. And it wasn't until a couple of minutes later
they told you the score.
Oh, geez, where did that come from?
Yeah, their last 2 minutes for St Kilda was very impressive. It was foot to the floor, helter-skelter footy, and they almost pulled off, and they were going into attack too.
Oh, they nearly got the draw, So, it was incredible.
Certainly two sides decimated from injuries at the moment, put on a pretty big spectacle as well. So congratulations to all the winning teams in the inaugural gather round here in SA, and we welcome you guys back next year.
And football was the winner.
Football was definitely the winner, not only at an AFL level, but I think all the SANFL clubs and local league clubs were able to experience some of it as well. So, special. All right, mate, let's move on to this week. We're going to whiz through these because we're already running a touch behind. Friday, Fremantle v the Bulldogs.
I'll go Fremantle.
I will go Freo as well. That's over in Perth.
Yep.
Saturday, we've got Port Adelaide v the West Coast.
I'll go Port, and I'll actually go that I reckon they'll win by over 100.
I'll go Port, but I reckon it won't be quite over 100. I reckon it'll be 10 goals. GWS v the Brisbane Lions.
Brisbane.
That's at Monica.
Yeah, I know. So it is a toss the coin
Yep.
in that regard.
Yep.
But surely Brisbane just the better bat deeper, you'd think. But at Monica, yeah.
Yep.
GWS definitely in with a chance.
Oh, I think Brisbane as well on that one. Grand final rematch, Saturday night, GMHBA Stadium down in Geelong there, Geelong v Sydney.
Purely because it's in Geelong, I'll go for Geelong, even though they lose Stanley and Stengel for a fair few weeks. But I think Sydney's back line, neither of McCartans are back, and Rampy still looks like he may miss as well. So
I think you got to back the Cats down in Geelong. Yep. All right, Sunday, 12:40 down at Tasmania, Hawks v the Crows.
While Adelaide have a terrible record down there at the moment, no injuries, they should beat Hawthorn.
I will back the Crows on that one as well. I think they're just playing unbelievably good footy at the moment, and I hope it continues. Carlton v St Kilda. This is going to be an absolute cracker.
Yeah, I want to see the teams, I admit, close to the mark. At the moment, Sard out for Carlton as well. So Sard, Doherty, McGovern to face a fitness test. Yep. Williams already out there. So it's technically 4 of their back 7. I'll go St Kilda. I'm
going to go St Kilda too. I'm a Blues man and I'd love to back them, but our tipping's pretty tight at the moment. So, no, I think I've got to look at it logically. I think St Kilda at the moment are they're batting quite deep, which we didn't expect, and they've burnt us a few times where we've sort of said the injuries are going to cost them, and then they've come out and played unbelievably well. I'm interested to see Carlton's reaction after last week, because I reckon Voss would have been dirty, obviously what will happen. But I think Rossi Lyon, he's just got a new lease of life about him, and he's coaching very, very well at the moment.
He seems to be a bit calmer.
Yeah, which is scary, isn't it? That's the scariest part about it. Yeah. We stick with Sunday. The Suns v North Melbourne.
Surely the Suns.
Yeah, up at Heritage Bank Stadium in Queensland there. I would back the Suns as well. This is an ANZAC round, so we have a game on Monday between Melbourne and Richmond.
I'll go Melbourne.
I'll go Melbourne as well. And the big one on Tuesday, Collingwood v Essendon.
At this stage, I'll still go Collingwood, but I may change my mind before then.
Fair enough. I'm going to go Collingwood as well. Merritt's a big out.
Yes. And look, I was really angry with Essendon on that last night. I thought Essendon wasted a perfect opportunity to educate the football public. If people look through the parameters and actually bother to read and learn the parameters, which they all criticise Michael Christian, at least go and learn the parameters.
Yep.
And it ticked 2 of the 4 boxes off big time.
Yep.
He did sling him to the ground. It was unnecessary. It was undue force.
Yep.
I thought it was just a blatant one game, and I really reckon Essendon were dumb to oppose it. They could have really helped and gone, that just as I said, Adelaide were dumb with McAdam early in the year.
Yep.
Same thing. I think Merritt's was even more obvious than what McAdams was, that there was no way in the world that he wasn't going to be suspended for the game. And people just don't get it. Concussion issue, the litigation out there, people just have no idea. And even footy people are naive. They have no idea. This is the greatest crisis facing footy. Do we want footy still to exist in 5 to 10 years?
Yep.
And it is that big an issue.
Absolutely.
It is massive.
We were going to hold this one for the rulebook rant later on, but you've gone early, which is fine. I don't mind. Go hard. That's okay. We'll leave it there on that one, and I'm sure we're going to come back to that over the next couple of weeks. And yeah, the first 5 rounds have really highlighted some issues that need a further scrutiny, but also we need to obviously highlight as well.
Yep.
All right, mate. We move on to the SANFL. This is our home ground, our home backyard, I suppose. Round 3, we've got Adelaide v the Bulldogs.
I'll go Adelaide, especially the fact that so few injuries. They're going to have a pretty fair SANFL side.
They're out at the ex-Convenience Oval at Elizabeth, but yeah, I'm going to back Adelaide as well. The Bloods and the Panthers at Hisense Arena.
Yeah, I'll go the Panthers.
I think the Panthers are looking pretty good too, so I'm going to back them. Sturt v Port Adelaide.
I'll go Sturt. I may go and have a look at that game on Sunday.
That one's at Wigan Oval, out at Unley. I'm going to go Sturt as well. Glenelg v the Eagles.
7:40 on Monday night, so I may go out and have a look at that one as well. Might as well take use of the media pass.
Absolutely.
I'll probably go...
Got a spare one?
No, I only got that one. I'll go the Eagles. I'll go the Eagles to cause an upset.
Yeah, I reckon I'm going to go the Eagles as well. I got a feeling that they're just ticking along quite nicely. And because it is the ANZAC round, the grand finalists from last year, Norwood v North at Norwood Oval.
Yeah, and look, Norwood have been very disappointing, but then North were
equally
average against Central's last round as well. So in that way, look, at the moment, hopefully Panos and Callow come in. We're recording this, nearly a week out. So it's still a few things to happen there, but unfortunately, I'll tip North. I obviously hope I'm wrong.
Yep.
But yeah, at the moment, I'll go the Roosters.
I'm in the same boat.
Yep.
Does the bye round, obviously, because of the gather round where no SANFL teams are playing, does this give Nord a bit of a chance to reset a little bit?
Hopefully. Just good to catch up with a few of the boys over the weekend.
Yep.
Down at the home of footy.
They can just take a deep breath and assess where the first 2 weeks.
Hopefully.
The Eagles were up and about in week one. We think Sturt are going to be around the mark this year. We've still got some injuries, some players to come back. Does it give a chance to just say, hang on, pause for a second, we've had a week off, let's just start again?
Hopefully, and if the King returns, and let's remember...
His statistics are pretty good when he plays, isn't it?
9 games and Nord won 8 of them, so let's wait and see.
I'm with North Adelaide as well, but hope that Nord get the job done, and I probably will be attending that game, so it'll be much fun out at Norwood Oval. Hopefully they can get a pretty good crowd there, like the gather round last weekend.
I thought we should my nomination, as I said to Baz and that, but just in general, I think we should have locked the gates and not let anyone out.
Isn't it great when a local suburban ground's full? Yes. All right, mate, we move on to LIV Golf. Wow, Peter Malcom once again. We talked at the top of the show saying South Australian government's done a fantastic job to get the gather round and a major event here. This is a worldwide event. We've got to put that in perspective.
Yeah, Jake Bushell was very much into me today about that because I'm not as big a golf person as he is, and full credit to Jake in that regard. But yeah, 12 teams, 48. You're 48 players, 54 holes. It's huge. In terms of your pro-am.
They're expecting 20,000 plus spectators.
Yeah,
and you got people flying in from all over the world.
Everywhere.
That's the thing.
Everywhere.
Like, there's plenty of Australians, there's plenty of South Australians that are going this, but you've got people coming from overseas.
Yeah.
Hotels are pretty much booked again. Second, maybe third weekend in a row. The South Australian government are ticking all the boxes, aren't they?
Yeah, I've got a feeling that I might spend a bit of time down the leg trap, and if I'm sure that I'll have books on me. So
the old Pro-Am, $12,000 a ticket apparently to play. But then there's only 48 players, and they are some of the world's best.
Apparently, Andrew Jarman's managed to snag a game in that. Bluey and Bernie were both playing because they're both very good golfers.
Yes.
Especially Bluey, obviously. But
he plays off a 2 handicap or a 1 handicap?
Bluey can seriously play.
Absolutely.
But they reckon that if you're looking for a few golf balls tomorrow, just go reasonably close to where Jars is playing and you're a fair chance.
Fair enough. It's a shotgun start, so it's a slightly different format to other golf tournaments. Everyone starts on a certain hole and they just basically continually play. It looks like 7+ are going to be televising some of the golf. But really, at the end of the day, this is the first international event for Australia of this magnitude, and it comes to Adelaide.
It's probably the first big one since COVID too. Yep. And so, there's many things there. It'll be just interesting to get down and just try and observe a little bit. I won't be going to the golf. I'll put my hand up and be honest there, but just to be around and just try and take in a bit of the atmosphere and see what it's like in that way.
And the weather's going to turn on.
Yeah.
We got the forecast tonight for the next 4 or 5 days, and it looks like low 20s, mid 20s, pretty much all for the 3 days of the tournament. Obviously, kicking off Friday, and Adelaide's going to put on an absolute show. And the players are already excited, and they've only just had a couple of practice rounds, so that's always a good sign.
It'll be massive.
All right, mate, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll whiz through the second half of the round of grounds.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Welcome back. We're going to start off with the soccer, mate. Adelaide United missed a big opportunity.
Yeah, created opportunities, but just didn't manage to put it in the back of the net to go down to Western United. So
that was 1-0, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they've left that open for second spot.
Only 3 points separating second. Adelaide United sitting in second spot, but third and fourth are only 3 points behind.
Yeah, so a big game against Perth Glory on the weekend now away, where if we'd managed to get that done last weekend, they probably would have been safe with the cushion. So. And
Perth United at the moment, Perth Glory at the moment are sitting ninth.
Yeah.
So a really good opportunity to sort of cement that top 2 spot. I don't think they're going to catch Melbourne City, who are sitting top, 8 points.
Spot.
Agreed. And then the following week, the final minor round game of the season against Central Coast Mariners at home on Friday the 28th. The Mariners are sitting third, so that's going to be a blockbuster game to finish the season and probably a good lead-up.
Yeah. So
to the finals.
Hopefully we'll have second spot tied up, but at least it probably puts it well and truly still in our it'll be up to us.
Absolutely.
To get second spot.
All right, mate, we move on to the, and we wish Adelaide United the best. We move on to the SANFLW Round 8, Norwood v North Adelaide.
Yeah, Norwood just quietly
building
there.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm commentating the Norwood game this weekend in the SANFLW, so yeah, looking forward to that on Saturday.
Now, the reserves, the SANFLW reserves, or development league.
The grand final. Norwood playing South Adelaide.
Yep.
At the parade as well on Saturday as well. So I'll be there.
Is that after that game?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. I might even drop in. I'm actually commentating myself actually on the Lawn Bowls on Saturday this week, and I reckon we're finished at around about 2:30, 3 o'clock. So I might drop into the parade.
Yeah, I would love both games to be done, but that's out of my control.
Yep. Panthers v the Bloods.
I'll go the Panthers. There as well.
I reckon the Panthers are ticking along nicely. Glenelg v the Eagles.
Glenelg still, but they have fallen away. I do give the Eagles a genuine chance there.
I might pick the Eagles on that one, only for injuries that might cost them a little bit. And Sturt v the Bulldogs.
Interesting game. I'll toss the coin.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's at home, I'll go Sturt.
I reckon Sturt as well.
But toss the coin.
They're playing pretty well, and Rashid, Indy Rashid's playing some very, very good football at the moment. So, all right, mate, we move on to cricket tonight. The squads have been announced for the Test final and the tour to England for the Ashes.
Yeah, I've got to be honest, I'm disappointed that Cam Bancroft's missed out. I think he's made enough runs. If you keep saying perform underneath and we'll pick you, he's done that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, average 60 for the year opening. For mine, he should have been in the squad.
Mm-hmm. Any surprises for you apart from Cam Bancroft? The obvious one is Dave Warner.
Yeah,
hasn't scored very well in England in the last couple of series.
But I think we all knew he was going to be picked. So in the end, that's not a surprise.
I mean, it's a 17-man squad, so there's no guarantees that he's going to be opening.
No, and they're revisiting it after the second test, is my understanding.
Right.
So, so that's why Nessa playing county cricket is still in the reckoning for later in the series, especially because like Stark traditionally falls away, so that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other things there.
Who opens? Khawaja?
I think it starts off as Khawaja and Warner.
Yep.
But Harris has already made a big 100 over there already. He hasn't got a good record in England in general.
Yep.
Renshaw's also a chance. Renshaw for mine is an opener. I still can't believe they batted him in the middle order, and
Yep.
the supposed gun player at spin. Well, I'm still buggered how they came up with that one. Yes, I think the bowling attack picked itself. Michael Neser is probably
The wild card.
Yeah, the unlucky one there,
Yep.
but hopefully around as well.
Yes.
And you know, that's where it probably made a little bit of a surprise to pick two keepers.
Mm-hmm.
That the keepers generally could have been playing for someone there. So that surprised me only a fraction.
Okay.
Only a fraction, though.
Do we give Australia a chance against India in the Test final?
I think it's...
Because it's a neutral ground.
It's just
so
neutral. You know, Cummins has an on game, you know, all that. He went through a bit with his mum and he probably wasn't as fit as well.
Yep.
So hopefully he hits the ground running a little bit because he was falling away a fraction.
Yes.
Bumrah's the other one. He hasn't played much cricket for a fair while. And so, again, we'll just be interested to see how he comes up as well. And because I don't think Pant's back yet for India either.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on that, obviously, as it gets closer. But obviously today the news came out that the squads were selected. Obviously no one in any specific positions. We can hypothesise until the cows come home on that one. But a couple of little surprises in there. But like you said, it's going to be an interesting little period for Australian cricket over in England.
Yep.
All right, mate, we're going to take a quick break. Once we get back from the break, we've got Barry Solomon, the head groundskeeper at the famous Norwood Oval.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Local legends.
Tonight, welcome aboard the great man Barry Solomon's, Norwood's long-standing ground manager of the Norwood Oval. And we thought it was appropriate with Gather Round just happened and really to probably go through and just give people a bit of an education out there, not only the things for Gather Round, but just upgrades of Oval over the years and things which, you know, Barry and the Norwood staff and obviously at all other grounds have had to negotiate and get through. And it's been a big week, Baz. Welcome aboard, mate.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Mate, we'll start. How long have you been at Norwood, and how did you get into curating the lovely Norwood Oval there?
I started at Norwood in 1989. A mate of mine, James Fantasia, who's the current CEO, had a chat with me one day and he said, "How'd you like to work in footy?" And so he set up an interview with Wally Miller. I went down and had a chat with Wall, and that was the beginnings. And so the first year I was there, I did baseball with a guy called John Pearce, who was on the ground at the time. And we built a bit of a relationship, and off we went. And baseball sort of stayed at Norwood from 1990 to 99 in the National League format. And we, as I said, we built that relationship, and in 96, I think it was, Johnny sort of parted company with Norwood, and Glenn Rosser asked me if I was interested in sort of staying on the Oval. So I took it on, and I've been on the Oval ever since.
Baz, on that, I totally understand on a curating side of things that baseball was painful with having the home the pitcher's mound, which was basically pretty much at centre half forward, and then the base marks at various spots on the ground. But I've got to be honest, geez, I miss baseball at Norwood, Baz. It was the home of baseball.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I was never really for it or against it. It was very labour intensive.
Yes.
Right through summer, which coming off the back of you couldn't cope with that now, I don't think, because footy is sort of 12 months of the year now.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Back in those days, you'd finish footy, you'd go straight into baseball, and you'd be at baseball for 3 months, or can't remember what period it went for. But like you said, a warm summer's night at Norwood, and I mean, there's a few things about baseball I can't talk about, but they were funny.
Oh,
they were
extremely great nights.
Funny.
Yeah, look, at one stage, the Kensington 9 were all ex-Norwood High. And I'll be honest, depending on what time of night that game was probably dependent on what we pulled up with the next day. And, yeah, there was across the road of the Red Leagues Club and then to the Marrickville and whatever nightclub. Geez, there was some big nights, Bez.
Yeah, that's right. And we had some fun. I mentioned recently about an incident where a bloke wrecked one of the change rooms after being ejected from a game. And he was an American, and he was 130 kilos, I think, and probably I can't remember what height, but he was massive man. They had a guy called Kenny Westlink, who was a team manager. I don't know if you remember.
Yep.
And Kenny, so this bloke gets ejected from the game, and Kenny came up to the office and he said to me, he said, "Barry, listen, we've got a bit of an incident down in the Western Stand. Do you want to come down and have a look?" And I thought, all right, I'll go down there. So I walked down, and I got within about 10 metres of the change room, and I could hear all this banging and clanging. And I thought, shit, that doesn't sound good. So I just peered in, and this bloke was dismantling the room. He pulled cupboards off the wall, snapped the door in half. And Kenny said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm not doing anything. I'm going back to the office."
Captain Courageous, Baz.
Yeah, I said, "Tell me once the bus is loaded and I'll go down there and survey the damage."
Do you think the baseball at Norwood Oval, I mean, obviously because of the stands and the tradition, obviously, of it being at Norwood Oval, was what made baseball really special at Norwood Oval?
Yeah, I think the stands, the old southern stand.
Yeah.
And, yeah, just that amphitheatre type setup, and just the history of the whole place. It was something that was fantastic. But as I said, things move, and it's hard to see a place for it now.
Yeah,
that's
true.
Not that it's up to me, but it's now with the evolution of football, women's football, the demands are so high that you haven't got that time anymore.
Some of the residents' letters across the road, James may have showed me a couple at one stage, and oh my goodness, just unbelievable. Like, I'm sorry, baseball was there before you bought your house.
Yes.
There, and you just shook your head in disbelief.
Yeah.
So
I think some of those people. See, baseball, when I first started doing it, was only, I think it was a couple of nights a week. I can't remember now. But
Wednesday nights was the big night.
Yeah, then eventually it went to like 4 days a week, and they had cannons and they had, music, they had all sorts of stuff. Footy's sort of doing the same now, but not to that degree. But I think originally that's what sort of got them offside was the constant level of noise. And, I grew up with a lot of those people, and so you could sort of understand. But that's the way that sport was evolving.
Yeah.
It's just the way that sport goes. And so, yeah.
Let's just cover through, one, how much better drainage is nowadays compared to the old days, like that famous day where we nearly lost Roger James in that in the forward pocket at the
northern end.
Northern end.
Yeah, like that's one of the all-time great photos.
That night, I think North Melbourne played Adelaide at Footy Park, and there was a storm of biblical proportions that night. The night before, might have been the Friday night, and that was a Saturday game. So as soon as the rain came in, back in those days, there was practically no drainage at all at Norwood. And because of the compaction, the constant use of the place, the ground compacted a lot. So if you got rain, heavy rain, it just wouldn't work through the surface. It would sort of sit there. And so I sort of knew on the Friday night, I thought we're going to be in trouble. And as it turned out, we just got a lot of rain. And but back in those days, I remember I joined a group at Adelaide Oval in the early 90s, and it was sort of loosely run by Les Burdett, Johnny Hawkins, Shane Harris, that crew who are all Adelaide Oval, either tennis club or bowling or whatever. And I met a bloke called Chris Trabilsi who had a verti-drain. And I sort of inquired about it and I found out what it did. And I went to, remember Dave Parkinson?
Yes, the late Dave Parkinson, yep.
I went to Dave Parkinson and I told him about it. And I said to him, we should just try it. Anyway, they sort of thought it's a bit of money. I think at the time it was like $500 maybe, but it was just something that we hadn't done before. So I convinced Dave and off we went. Chris brought it out. We had a crack. Dave saw it operating. And on from there, the place has been verti-drained regularly since 1996, amongst a whole host of other things. But with using a proper drainage sand in conjunction with the verti-draining and just regular cutting and a whole host of other things, it's just served us really well.
So just explain to the listeners what the verti-drain is. Obviously, we know it's for drainage, but how does it actually work?
It's got spikes that you can vary the depth of the spikes, and it's got a crack on it. So as the spikes are going up and down, it cracks backward and forward underground. Mm-hmm. So it sort of just opens it up deep down as well. And you can vary the depth all the time. And sort of we record the depth so that we know where we're going every time we use it. But as I said, I reckon in conjunction with the drainage sand, that's what transformed Norwood over the years. That was probably the biggest thing. And once we started to get a bit of a handle on it, I mean, the other night, even Saturday night, I think we got a lot of rain in between the gathering. And it didn't concern me at all. I wasn't, sort of thought it'll just go straight through as it did. And on the Sunday, it was perfect.
Oh, look, fantastic, really Nick. It was in great nick for both games, Baz. Something you should be massively proud of, and that we'll come back to that. Going through, so the drainage, let's just explain to people out there, as again, I'm emphasising that the same thing happens at other grounds. So a redevelopment, like the new lights, the Wolf Blast Centre when that was being built, go through some of the stuff there, the changes which happened at the Oval, because, again, emphasising that's happening at other grounds. So just explain that and the challenges, Baz.
Over the years at Norwood. Well, we had, years ago, like people come into the place, you'll get people visit from interstate, and they'll walk in and they go, geez, Norwood hasn't changed in years. But what they don't understand is behind the scenes, there's been massive, massive changes, So when I first started, the bars ran off extension cords along the back fences.
That's right.
And I remember having a chat with Glenn Cooper one day. Not Glenn Cooper, Glenn Rosser. And I said to him, what's happening up on Cooper's Hill is that people are getting pass-outs. They can't get served quick enough, and they're getting pass-outs. They're going up the Norwood Hotel, buying piss and bringing it back. And I said, is there a way that we could look at maybe redoing the bar? And as it turned out, I think he got on to Glenn Cooper and they had a chat. And Jerry Dantokia ended up building the bar. But for the first time, they underground the power services and Cooper's Hill at that stage. I think, I can't remember exactly, but I think on the first night, like it doubled the turnover the first night in that new format. And then there was, you guys would remember the Stobie poles at the southern end.
Yes.
That were installed for, I believe they were installed for baseball originally.
Yep.
So we had the two at the southern end and then we had four other towers. And over a period of time, and once again, my memory's failing me a bit, but it would have been in the 90s, I reckon, the towers became unsafe to work on.
Yep.
So especially the ones at the northern end, it just became unsafe to work on. And I met a bloke one day. He did public lighting for the council and had a bit of a chat with him and told him what we could potentially look at. And he went away and he came up with the original drawings for the next set of four towers. So that went on to the council. I believe. And from there, in 2010, we replaced the light towers, which, replaced the old ones, which had been there, that would have been 50 years at least. So that was the start of something massive, because they were really good-looking towers and they served a purpose again. But there was, when we sold the Red Leagues Club, when we created Cooper's Corner outside the RSL,
Yep.
there was obviously a need. Once the Red Leagues Club went down, Norwood people just didn't have anywhere to go on a match day.
Yeah.
So that was the old tractor shed. And
of course it was, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a dead end down there. Like, it didn't see many people. So we gutted it out and rebuilt it into what it is today. And once again, it sort of bounces off Cooper's Hill, gives that both ends of the ground bounce off each other.
Yeah.
So there was that. There was obviously now the Wolf Blass Centre, which is fantastic. And that, that's been, I think, 3 years in the making. It took, when I say 3 years in the making, I think it was 2003 to 2018 or something.
Yeah.
In trying to make it happen, but it was 3 years in the building. And there's been a host of other things along the way, and a lot of them have been. I remember there was a guy at the council, Alan Pickering, that I met once again, I think it was in the late 90s, and collectively we devised a 15-year working plan for the Oval, which meant the restoration of the southern grandstand roof,
Yes.
the eaves, the gutters, all that sort of thing, the rails on the western grandstand on the front walkway, the renaming, the Sir Edwin Smith nameplate on the grandstand and the fascia on the western grandstand. So there, amongst a host of other things that went on. And that was quite good, because it kept everyone in line. We had our obligations, they had their obligations, and it was brilliant,
And was there an upgraded sprinkler system there as well, in amongst that?
Yeah, sorry, mate. I've been sick all day, so I'm a bit hazy.
It's okay.
1970, I think it was, the first irrigation system went in, and it was like in 1970, it was state of the art. I think it was one of the first irrigation systems of that type. Cut a long story short, in the mid-90s, I found a bloke, and his name was Jim Lawler. Anyway, I think he was in a nursing home at the time. Anyway, I had a chat with him, and he said, my God, he goes, don't tell me it's still there. That was in the 90s. So over the years, Bob Dawson, Smokey Dawson, used to patch it up, and we'd put Band-Aids on it and try and keep it going. And then, but once footy became really intense and you were going at it 12 months of the year, we thought, shit, we've got to do something, because it's just the spacings of the sprinklers were 21 metres apart. And so you'd have to judge wind at night quite often. Like, you judge it either way, whether it was windy or not windy, to try and make sure that you got a cover. So I had a chat with the boys at the council, and once again, they acted on it. And last year, I think it was 2021, might have been 2021, they replaced it all. And so it's fantastic now. The spacings now, I think, are 15 metres apart. So there's good coverage. The sprinklers are opposing nozzles, so you're getting cover right around as they rotate. And I think, once again, that's been significant in helping the grass to really harden up, and
And just on that too, Baz, I'm just thinking of when the building was doing for the Wolf Blass Centre. I'm thinking of all the wires which are around, and of how much stuff you guys had to do. I reckon at one stage we had to make sure that the ditch was being done in the right spot, and had to move it to some degree, and just things like that, which people would have no idea how much work goes on behind the scenes.
As I said, Mel, look, some of the stuff is hazy to me, really. I just remember that there was so much going on, and we were trying to run a footy season.
Yeah.
In amongst it, so and you had to. You know, there were people who said should shut the ground down, but it's impossible. You can't. You know, we had to play footy. But there were just so many things. I mean, I think the thing that sticks in my mind is for the last 3 or 4 years, there's hardly been a day when there hasn't been noise of some description.
Yeah.
Or someone ringing at 6 o'clock in the morning wanting access to something. And I said to my wife the other day, I said, the Monday after the gather round was the first day since December the 16th that I hadn't arrived at Norwood to see people everywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it was beautiful. It was so peaceful. But that was probably the thing that stuck in my mind. And then behind the scenes, like you said, all the stuff that goes on that people aren't aware of, it's just amazing because the ground's 122 years old.
Yeah.
So it's really old, you know. Then over the years, there's been a lot of patching up and a lot of stuff that's gone on that people weren't aware of. So you find stuff all the time, and then you've got to make sure that whatever changes you're making are compliant, and it's fascinating.
So leading on to obviously the AFLW comes to Norwood Oval. How much lead time did you get for that to prepare the oval and the facilities there?
The AFLW, I reckon the first time around 2017, I think it was.
Yeah, the first game was the Crows in Brisbane. Was the first game,
and I reckon we had a bit of time up our sleeve back then. But once again, footy doesn't stop really. So you're always trying to balance things, and it's a credit this time around to all the different football departments with this gather round that everyone just hung tough, and you know there were people offshore everywhere. You know, they were shipping them out, training at different places. So it's a credit to everyone, not just Norwood, but all the other facilities that allowed us to train and, you know, backed it in and whatever. But the AFLW, that was interesting. That first Brisbane-Adelaide game, I reckon we had 13,500.
Yeah.
And it was a fair buzz. But, you know, that's what happens. We're always trying to balance out what we're doing and, you know, trying to provide the best. I remember, to be honest with you, I said to a group of kids a couple of weeks ago, the thing that really got me going on the Oval was one day Matthew Kelly was a Crows listed player.
Reckless,
and he got hurt at Norwood.
Against Stir,
on a really unstable part of the ground. And it was bad, you know, he got pretty badly hurt. And and from that day on, I sort of looked and I thought, I never want that to happen again, not to anyone, you know, but to see someone's career impacted and whatever.
He slipped under Corey Gray because Corey played for uni, so I'd spoken about it with Corey at length, and he said he nearly vomited on the spot with just seeing Matty's leg. Yeah.
But, you know, back in those days, man, I mean, you guys remember how the ovals all were.
Yeah.
You know?
It was just very boggy.
Yeah, it was just accepted that that's how it was, and, you know, it's just very... And the shame of it is that when it's wet, it's not too bad, but once it dries up, it's a whole new ball game because the ground becomes hard and there's nothing you can do with it.
Oh, the ground's just everywhere. I think back playing for Adelaide Uni, a game at Adelaide Lutheran on West Terrace. One of our guys kicked the ball and his boot came off, and we turned around. We couldn't find his boot ever again. It had sunk in. No one ever found his boot. Wow. You think of that compared to the league grounds, like it just everywhere was. Uni Oval used to absolutely. It was terrible, and it stunk to train on. But from the whiff from the Torrens at 5 o'clock, it was worse at training than it was game time. And I just think no. Nowadays, anyone complaining about a ground, they've got no idea. Like there was a bit of carry on last year at Norwood where Baz, we were just so unlucky to cop the wet weather where that state primary school's carnival was on. And there was a bit of carry on with the game against Glenelg. Realistically, the Oval was still in bloody good nick. It was ridiculous.
Look, mate, we run a sizable football program.
Exactly.
That goes for a fair portion of the year. And the last year was just a combination of some really wet weather and a massive workload. And in the end, it just happened that it got to that point of the year where there was going to be a tipping point. And, but at the same time, the ground never, as bad as it looked, it still drained.
Yeah.
I mean, there were moments where it was wet, where it was raining. But after that, I remember in 2010, 2011, we were coming up to a baseball final series, and I was sort of advised. So what happened was the baseball final series was going to be telecast in America on whatever it's called. What's their sporting channel there? They were going to telecast it live into the States. And Pat Kelly was the general manager at the time of the Bite. Anyway, we had a chat with Pat Kelly, and we wanted to make it look $1 million. Anyway, and it was my fault. I got a bit too cute, and we over-fertilised. And we just suddenly, all the things that we didn't want to happen happened. It just, and so it just turned bad. And the ground just completely packed up in the following season. And I remember Keith Thomas came out one day and he goes, "What do you think we should do?" And this was early in the season. And I said to him, "Mate, there's nothing. There's nothing we can do. All we can do is just hold on and hope that we get some good luck, As it turned out, Norwood played North, and it was probably round 15.
Yeah.
And it was a live telecast. And that Friday night, so it was a Saturday game, on the Friday night, it poured all night. And the ground was already like it was last year against the Bays. It was already in that sort of state. Yeah. Anyway, so on the Saturday morning, we had just before the reserves game, we had another 10 mil. Then we had 5 during the game. And you could have built the ark. And, it was bad, really bogged up. But in the reserves game, I think it was 15 goals to 10. And in the league game, I think it was 17 goals to 12 or something.
Yeah.
So the ground actually drained. And in the last quarter, one of the Norwood blokes bounced up the wing, was taking bounces. So I looked and I thought, as bad as it was, the old girl, these days, it just responds, we do all the right things, the best that we can possibly do given the environment that we work in, but it always responds. I love it.
And
I love it.
On together around this year, that the final was probably a bit more assistance by AFL, and so there was a bit more funds around than what there's obviously is normal. So how often were you're fertilising? How often were you mowing? You seem to be mowing it just about every day, Baz.
It was in the end. It was 4 days a week.
Yeah.
4 cuts a week. And the AFL were fantastic. They engaged the boys at Adelaide Oval to pop out and give us a hand. So and they were incredible, like Damien Hoff, Todd Heinrich, and Caleb Hearn, and they spent a bit of time out there, especially over that last month. So as you can imagine, coming up to the gather round, everyone was just under the pump. I think one day I had something like 140 calls for the day, and it was just insane. I'd never worked in an environment like that. It was mad, but so rewarding. And the fact that the Adelaide Oval boys came out, it was brilliant, because we learnt so much off them. And they weren't hiding any secrets, they were sort of full of knowledge. And so, a lot of it you can attribute to that and the AFL and Norwood, like the fact that everyone wanted to drive in the same direction. And as I said, the impact on Norwood, like we're still trying to run a season.
Yes.
And it was a credit to James to tweet to everyone that everyone just held their nerve. And we, as much as that, I'm sure there were some days where, everyone wanted to kill each other. But we hung on, and I think in the end, it actually worked out all right.
How much lead time did you get from the AFL in preparing? Because the state government only had about 5 months to sort of get this all organised in. How soon did you guys find out that it was going to be Norwood Oval as a host venue?
Well, what happened was I think originally we were notified that we were in the hunt.
Yeah.
I think. But in November, we changed the light towers. So we had a refit of all brand new light towers.
Yeah.
Going over to LED. So we come off the grand final win, and we went straight into the light tower project. So the ground was already under the pump at the end of the season, had a brilliant grand final victory, went into the light tower project, and then straight after the light tower project, at that stage we knew that it was on and that we didn't have much time to really start to turn things around. So it was just full hammer,
And the light tower thing was a huge job. Again, and people just don't notice that. All of a sudden there's lights up. Oh, that's different. Well, they have no idea how much goes on to make sure that happens.
Well, the unique thing about Norwood, you can't access anything without being on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the cost of flooring an oval to protect it, it's just a massive cost. So they went in el natural, really, and unfortunately we had, I think there was 20 out of 30 days it was wet. Yeah. But again, with everything that's happened, it's an absolute credit to everyone that everyone did the best that they could possibly do,
And how good did the old girl look in the end, Baz, and how rightly you were grinning like a Cheshire cat last weekend, and so you bloody should have been, mate.
Well, I think it was just a collective effort, and behind the scenes to know what had actually gone on and where we'd come from to arrive at that. I remember the first time the AFL popped out to have a look, I think they sort of just looked and thought, this is pretty horrific, But the fact that we were able to, as a group, turn it around, and it was so rewarding and so satisfying because of where we'd come from, the time frames. I mean, there was a whole lot of stuff. There was the rebuild of the main canteen at the southern end, which meant that was a building site for 3 months. There was the refit of the coaches' boxes in the western stand. There was power cuts. There was all sorts of stuff. So you had 2 building sites, and you had a ground that needed desperate work. And then on top of that, everything else that went on. And I think the funny part about it is, like, people turn up to an AFL game and they watch the game and they go, but they don't realise behind the scenes the signage, the grass art, the people involved at all the different levels, scaffold people, and it's crazy.
I thought with the crowd there, Baz, I just thought we should have locked everyone in, mate, not allowed anyone to go.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was a good weekend.
Oh, it was.
Did you get 5 minutes to sit back and actually watch some of the footy on the weekend?
Yeah, I went. I sort of got the girls a position up in the southern stand, my girls, and so for a period there, I think it was on the Sunday Arvo, I went up there and just sat with my daughter, and just had a look, and it was great, to see that sort of vibe, and just a massive thank you to the government and to the AFL, to the Norwood Council.
But you had to put up with Will Bakewell in the grandstand up there with you, mate. So that was a pretty big significant out of you. G'day, Will. I'm sure you'll enjoy your mention there.
Where was that? What was that?
I'm just saying, with your daughter, with Will Bakewell on a Sunday. So that was a big commitment by you as well, mate. So touche, Will.
William.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So no, but I mean, and the board of the footy club, the board, just fantastic. That they had the faith, because there were days where I'm sure they looked and thought, maybe this is a bridge too far, but they held firm. And as I said, it was just brilliant to see the whole state pull together.
Oh, it was fantastic. And that was the thing with me, Baz. I don't think there would be a supporter from a club I didn't speak to last weekend. I spent a fair bit of time at the footy bit in Elder Park and all that, and it was just awesome. Look, I'm not an AFL person. I'm far more an SANFL person, but it was absolutely awesome to finally have something which wasn't Victorian-centric and be here and appreciate it. And the atmosphere it was just like the inaugural Grand Prix, and we're going to cover it again a bit later on, and it was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was. If Impey had scored that goal, that last goal, I reckon the place would have exploded.
Yeah, because it was a pro. And to our credit, and to you, Baz, Hawthorn have already requested to play again at Norwood Oval next year. So hopefully that does help us keep at least one game.
Yeah, that'd be good. I think. As I said, I can't ever remember a time when there was such a good feeling and people were. Even in the turf industry, guys all texting each other at Mount Barker. Mount Barker, Matty Sampson at Unley. Everyone just texting each other. Is everyone all right? How you're going? And it was fantastic, that just everyone bonded together. And
I think that's a key point, Baz. It's a really important point. Exactly that. Everyone bonded together. It was a unique atmosphere.
A unique experience really.
And even look, I actually went out to Unley for the Collingwood training on Sunday morning, got asked upstairs to Sturt's new facility, which is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Just things like that. It was just a goodwill vibe with so many things.
Yeah. As I said, it's just a massive, we're just blessed that we were given the opportunity, I think.
And hopefully we keep it next year, and hopefully, therefore, I would say that the canteen at the scoreboard end gets the same treatment as the canteen did at the other end would be fantastic. Yeah. So we'll wait and see on that one.
Yeah.
Mate, we have to ask, there's probably some games that stick out in your mind. Let's start with the baseball. Is there one particular baseball game that sticks out for you over the years?
I think there were numerous things that happened in baseball. One night, Tony Harris handed me a bat and put me on home plate and threw a few balls to me, and I didn't hit one. I didn't hit one ball. And he was only just lollipopping him, and I said to him, mate, there's something going on here. But that stood out. So that showed me that I wasn't a baseballer. And then there was a final one night, and there was a guy called Craig Watts.
Yes, Goodwood Saints footballer. Yes. Big, burly. Yep.
Yeah. And so I reckon he was a lefty.
Yes, correct.
And so the bases were loaded maybe, and it was the end. It was in the ninth innings, and Adelaide needed a run to win. And Watts has stepped up and he's pumped this ball down the Western Grandstand line, and it went over the home run fence and it bounced in the driveway, and I think might have even hit the wall of the RSL, which is a massive hit. And Adelaide got up. There's some of the personalities in baseball were fantastic over the years.
And then obviously we'll split the next question into two here. The SANFL, some key highlights from the SANFL days.
I reckon the SANFL, there was a Norwood North game, and myself and Gavin Goodfellow were in the race. We were at the southern end in the tunnel, I think, and it was coming on half time, and there was all this commotion, and there's a guy called Christian O'Brien.
Yes, windscreens. Yep.
Yeah, big Obi. We saw Obi pumping. His legs were pumping. He was going 100 mile an hour, and he's running towards the race. And I thought, maybe he's got to go to the toilet. But in the bottom of the race, it was on. And you remember, you probably both remember it. It was a massive blue in the race, in the players' race.
I certainly remember the Northwest one with Bodie and Collins.
And I remember the North Centrals one down the southern
one in
end,
89.
Yeah, Northern Centrals. I remember a game in... Well, and that was another one, was Northern Centrals in 2000, when Centrals were making their run to their first premiership. And it was on a Friday night, and David Walk, I think, was the general manager, and South were playing West at Adelaide Oval. And so a lot of the cops went to Adelaide because I think they got better sandwiches and whatever. Anyway, so here we were. I think we had just under 10,000 people Friday night. Central's making a run for it. And I think traditionally Central's had come to Norwood and win the early game in the year. And then in the latter part of the year, Norwood would always run over them. But that night, Central's came from behind, and I was standing in the Western Tunnel and I saw a flare go off in the southern grandstand. It was like an orange flare. And I remember I got in contact with Walkie and I said, hey, mate, listen, I don't feel good about this. I reckon it just felt bad. Like it felt like
something was going to go wrong, yeah.
Yeah. So I rang the cops and just said, look, I think it's, maybe better have a presence out here. So I went out in the southern car park. Before that, there was a 44-gallon drum. We used to have these 44-gallon drums up on Cooper's Hill. And this 44-gallon drum got lobbed through the air. And a father put his kid out in the pocket while the play was on. And I looked and I thought, that is unusual to land your kid out on the field while the play's on.
Wow.
Anyway, so I went out to the southern car park to meet the cops, and the car turned up, and this one bloke got out with two girls. And I remember saying to him, is this it? Like, it's just the three of you? Yeah, we're right. Show us where the problem is. So I thought, all right. So I walked them around to the main canteen at Gate 1, and they got just to the start of the ramp, and they've looked up on Cooper's Hill. And on Cooper's Hill, there was Dennis McIntosh, George Dantokia. It was frightening. Anyhow, they just got to the start of the ramp, and this copper's grabbed his radio and his breaker. You can tell straight away. they called for the reinforcements straight away. But it was on. It was completely on. And Central's got up and won. And I think Scott Lee maybe climbed up a point post at the end of the game. And the Central cheer squad were just going berserk. But atmosphere, it was incredible atmosphere. Maybe not supported these days by people, but the atmosphere was electric, And
then obviously the AFL, the first AFLW game there, and obviously Gather Round would probably be the two highlights.
Oh, I can think of a grand final where a Payneham Norwood Union's Salisbury grand final. Baz, probably we can discuss a little bit of it. Probably 90% of it can't go to air, but we can probably discuss 5%. And a previous guest on our show, Brett Zorsey, may have been handy that night.
But to sort of back that up, that was years ago.
Yeah.
And I know that the whole game and sport in general has changed now. A lot of things are not acceptable. That wasn't acceptable then. No. But you sort of look at it and think, for me personally, I look back over the years at all the moments and I think I don't regret anything, and I just look at it and I think it was just part and parcel of what went on.
I think back to that day. I actually in some ways regard that as Gary McIntosh's greatest hour, that he very, very firmly went to Payneham. There'd be no retaliation and no thing in it. If Macca hadn't done that, I actually think that would have ended up as
got out of control.
I think it would have been the biggest brawl ever at footy in South Australia.
Yeah, it would have been a complete riot, without a doubt. But Macca, you're right. Yeah, to deliver that message that it doesn't matter what happens, play the ball, and I think they ended up winning by 145 points.
It was ridiculous.
And I know I shouldn't say this, but what stood out in my mind about that was in the last quarter, Payneham had a full forward, or one of the forward line players, and they were up by 130 points, I think it was. He kicked a goal, he ran to the Cooper's Hill pocket, and he sculled a beer. Like his mates were on the hill. And he sculled this beer, he got back on the lead and took another mark and kicked another goal. So it all happened without a break, without a pause. just sculled the bee, got back on the lead, took a mark, kicked another goal.
Welcome to local footy.
Oh, that was probably one of the more mild things to happen that day too, Baz. Yeah.
But as I said before, you can't condone stuff and whatever, but stuff happens, and I look back on it, and I'm 60 now, and I look back on it and I think I've been absolutely blessed over the years to be involved in something that means so much to so many people at every different level, and
yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, just it's something that turns people around, and I mean, even we use a bloke on the scoreboard at junior games, I think he still does it.
Yeah,
and that guy is just respected by everyone. Everyone treats him well. He's autistic, and they treat him well, and he's loved. And he performs a service. He goes up there. And I remember, I won't name him, I don't think, but one day there was an amateur grand final, and the Crows were playing West Coast. So it was probably around 2005, 2006. They were playing West Coast in a prelim at Footy Park. And this bloke, the game ended, and the Crows and West Coast had a later finishing time. So the amateurs finished, and it was nearing dark at Norwood. And then he's up on the scoreboard, and he's updating the AFL scores.
That's right.
Point for point in the dark. And the families who are waiting for their kids, they're just looking at me and going, what's the story with this bloke? And I said, he's just in the moment, he's sort of he's got it all happening. So, yeah.
Well, mate, we have to say thank you for preparing not a fantastic ground at Norwood Oval, but in general the gather round really brought out the best in the old girl, 122 years old, and she looked at her peak, really.
Well, I just, once again, it had less to do with me and a lot more to do with a lot of other people, No. I just played a role, but there was
Baz, take your hour, mate. Thank you. Thank you. That's the words to be spoken, Baz.
No worries, boys. All right. Thanks for the chat.
Thanks, Baz.
Thank you for joining us and giving us your insights into a bit of turf care at the Norwood Oval.
No worries.
Thanks, Baz.
Good luck.
Thank you, mate.
Sure.
Bye.
See you.
And we've just been talking to Barry, and Barry was fantastic in just letting us know the intricacies that happened around a ground that not a lot of people know about.
And that was a big part of why we decided to get him on.
Yeah.
Also to show, yes, it is Norwood. You can argue on that, Malcolm. You've got another Norwood person on. But it was really more to just try and explain that.
Well, it happens at every ground.
Redevelopments and what's happened with drainage and all that. So it is obviously those things that are very similar to all grounds. So that's why I have Barry on to explain things which have happened over the years, gradual improvements, which that's a ditto at all grounds.
Absolutely. And like Barry said, obviously during the gather round, it was quite a big event for everybody in the state, and all the greenskeepers were all messaging each other going, how's that going? Do you need help with this? Can I be of assistance? And that fraternity that is born out of events like this, that they can back it up. And if the gather game does get moved to another suburban ground over the next couple of years, I'm sure the same thing's going to be happening, that they're going to lean on Barry to say, hey, what did you find work well, what didn't work so well, and assist us. And then the curators from the Adelaide Oval, obviously the AFL would have had a bit of a say in helping out, but they were more than willing to share some of the not the secrets, so to speak, but share some of the secret herbs and spices to make things work smoothly.
And Damien and his team there, Damien Hoff and his team, just fantastic. And, they are a close-knit community, that group.
Yep.
There's a few, and it is such a passion, the turf industry, that some of them, that's very much their life. And
from a lawn bowls,
more than me,
from a lawn bowls point of view, it's a talking point every weekend. We didn't touch on this with Barry, but the Adelaide Oval, we didn't quite touch it with him, but we'll talk about it. The Adelaide Oval held up extremely well after having 6 games on it.
And I said it would.
Yeah.
People going on about it, I said, no, it won't be a problem.
And
honestly, the amount, they've got it down pat so much. Their drainage is so good.
Yes.
And all that. was never going to be a problem.
So let's look at it. The first couple of days, beautiful conditions. The Thursday night, they thought that we might get some rain. It ended up being 20-odd degrees and a perfect night. Saturday was not too bad early on, but Saturday night it absolutely bucketed to the point where you're like, wow, is the Oval going to come up Sunday for the doubleheader? I looked at it and went, there's no difference. It's unbelievably how well those guys did.
No, and their drainage, as I said, it is fantastic. It is the best turf in the country,
Absolutely.
that ground, and it showed it.
And let's rewind. We'll talk to the turf community while we're giving them a bit of praise. Ed Sheeran concerts were held on all the major ovals 2 weeks before the start of the season. They were able to get those grounds up for round one.
Exactly.
And now you've got an oval that's played 6 games in a weekend, and it's held up beautifully well. It's just a great effort from those guys.
Yeah, and let's remember those 6 games, it's really not much more than what reserves and league Saturday, Sunday, and that. So I had no doubt whatsoever it wasn't going to be a problem.
Look, it looked fantastic. It held up fantastically, and I think it was another big tick, not only for the gather round staying in SA as well, that the ovals can handle the traffic.
Very much
All right,
so.
mate, let's move on to Happy Days.
Happy Days.
All right, and we start off with a happy birthday to Matty Crouch, a little bit of a maligned Adelaide Crow. Drafted in 2013, has played 136 games for the Crows in his 9-year career. Yet to register a game in 2023, but a previous club best and fairest winner.
Now, I still think now with the side, they're improving, that he'll play a role still this season.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Sloane, the Walker role where they are mentoring those guys. He may come in and slot in at a very important time, and you're right, I think he will have a role to play.
They'll get injuries.
Absolutely. Happy birthday to Matty Crouch this week. We move on. Figure skating. This one's an interesting one. American figure skater Tonya Harding sues ex-husband Jeff Gillilly for $42,500.
Bizarre to say the least.
The whole thing was bizarre.
She is an interesting character, and with a...
That was in 1994, so...
Yeah, weird.
$42,500 seems a rather small amount to be suing somebody for, but through that period where all of that infamous knocking of the knees, I'm just trying to word it correctly, happened. 42. She sues her ex-husband for it. Interesting.
Court-martial bowl, Lily, no score.
Let's move on that one. In 2013 soccer, Manchester United defeat Aston Villa to claim the 2012-2013 English Premier League title.
You'll certainly get a big tick from my son Daniel that you've included this week, mate. He's a big Manchester United fan. There's no Norwood posters up with him. It's all Man United.
Wow.
So,
We'll big shout out to Daniel on that one, and I might add a few more in there if I know he's a United fan, and I know you're a QPR man, and I'm a Chelsea man, so we'll work on that over the next couple of weeks. And to finish us off, mate, tennis, Monte Carlo Tennis Masters, the great Rafael Nadal defeats Kei Nishikori 6-3, 6-2 to extend his Open era record for the most wins at the same event. I know we've got the number down here, but 11 is the number. I was going to ask you to guess, but...
Well, it's extraordinary that more than a decade that he's dominated that tournament. That is quite... He's the longevity and things there where you come up with things about Nadal, and it's quite often about longevity.
Yep. I mean, French Open.
Yeah.
Even this year, he's sort of a little bit under an injury cloud, but people are still backing him to win. And I wouldn't put my house on him not winning, because he will come to play at the French Open this year.
If his body's remotely close to be able to, he's still in with a chance. Yep.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we've got the rulebook rant. We'll let you extend on from what you started before, mate.
Extra time. Big finish.
All right, mate, I'll let you take it away.
As I mentioned earlier, really dark with Essendon. I had interviewed the their CEO, Craig Vozzo, last Friday at lunch. So Craig may have received a couple of text messages about Essendon in that regard. They wasted what should have been a huge chance to educate the footy public. The majority of the footy public out there still have no idea. It's hilarious how much they criticise Christian and the system, but don't understand the system.
Yep.
At least bother to learn the bloody system, how it works. And players, how about the tackling? It's not whether we like it or agree with it and say it's now soft and all that era. Concussion is threatening the very future of the game. There is naivety and people thinking, insurance will cover it. Pig's arse it will. There's that much money potentially being sued out there, which I don't agree with, by the way, whatsoever. In my bit, you knew playing for Adelaide Uni that you were more of a chance to get concussed playing Div 7 reserves than you were A1, etc., and the higher up. We all knew you crossed the white line, you could get sued playing footy. I vehemently disagree with what's going on. Yes, the AFL maybe could be doing things to support a bit better, but this suing bit for mine is crap. It's money grabbing bit, not seeing the overall picture, and it does. The game could end up finishing because of it, and that, one, let's make sure the tackles and bumps are done far better. Stop defending people with it. Listen and learn about it. And then let's see some people like Gary Ablett, Darren Jarman, etc., actually see the big picture, which I don't think they are.
All right, let's start in reverse.
Yep.
The concussion and the money that is going to need to be paid out for this, it has to come from somewhere. So tickets prices are going to have to go up. You would expect that there would be membership prices that would probably have to go up that would potentially cover that. So that's not good for the game. I meant, cost of living pressures and
I just think
I think it's just going to become a little bit more expensive than when at a time when we don't need it.
I think that's only the tip of the iceberg with it. Pete, I think it's way more serious than that. They're talking millions, billions.
Yep.
Hey, that doesn't grow on trees. I can't see the game surviving it. That's how much I see it.
Yep. So then going back to your first comments where the comments, I suppose, social media is rife with a lot of these comments, and I've read probably just as much as what you have on it. Is it a case, how can I put it, education of certain tackles? Because if you have a look at all of the tackles this year that have caused a head knock to the ground, they've all been different in some way, shape or form. So there is that grey area from a public point of view.
Yeah, I agree with that. But as Jared Waitley said today, he listed them all: Green, Merritt. I'm just trying to think of them all off the top of my head.
Yep.
I should have made sure I had that written all up.
Yep. The Rowan one last week. Yep.
Yeah.
The Merritt one this week.
I'm trying to think. Was the Rowan? And look, I think probably Day from Hawthorn getting 2 was slightly unlucky.
Yep.
Rowan was very lucky to only get 1. And Geelong were going to take that, and then apparently got told no, that you take that. Fair chance it's going to go to at least 2.
Yes.
And they suddenly dropped it. That was done by Geelong.
Yep.
There's enough cases by now. Guys, you got to tackle. You've got to twist and turn and make the effort. Not sling, not the crunch into the ground.
I mentioned this last week. We talked about being a generational thing where back in the day, the clubs were almost hiring rugby coaches to teach players to tackle correctly, I suppose, for technique and rolling and slinging, so to speak, to the ground, because that was what was required then. Yeah. It needs a re-education, doesn't it? The next generation need a re-education.
I do agree with the point James Gallagher made to me, and pretty strongly, where Gags is saying the umpires have got to blow the whistle a lot earlier, and I do think that is playing a big part of it. This bit of where the umpires have been told, the instructions, let it go.
Prior opportunity.
Got to get it. Yeah. Well, that's creating a fair bit of the problem. So there's got to be some umpiring at headquarters swallow their pride and admit they've got to get better. And the chance of that happening is probably as much chance as you and me winning cross lotto this week, Pete. So,
fair enough. I watched some YouTube footage of a Norwood Sturt game, would have been about a month and a half ago, before that round that Norwood played Sturt. it was at Norwood Oval. I was actually really surprised not only how flowing the game was, and again, it's a different era. I totally get it, 100%.
Yep.
But the umpire's whistle really was very quick and hot on not only holding the ball, but to get in there, take the ball off the player and ball it up, and it flowed so much quicker.
Yeah, I umpired back in the SANFL back then. Yes, I only did it was the league panel 1 year in 83, but I certainly know that off by heart as an umpire. We did get in. We did blow. We got in between players. We throw the bloody thing up, get it going again. And the umpiring has got to get better. That is part of it.
So the getting going of the game, so they're not blowing the whistle and giving the player opportunity to get the ball out to keep the game going. They could almost do it the same way by blowing the whistle a little bit quicker and either calling holding the ball or balling it up.
Just balling it up. Get in there. Throw it up. Bang. Keep it going.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mix between players and umpires that this has got to come together. All right. Love the rulebook grant tonight. I think that was an absolute beauty, and certainly Essendon did miss an opportunity there for education, but they're going to try and get their captain off to play in the ANZAC round, so they've got a vested interest in doing the right thing. So it is interesting how it goes. All right, mate, let's wrap this one up. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Barry, and as per usual, we promise to do better next week.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.